The Reckoning, Book 4, The Horseman. The Odes 3-2. Dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. It is sweet and proper to die for the fatherland. Horace of Rome, 23 BC. Memento mori. Bent double, like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and towards our distant rest began to trudge. Men marched asleep. Many had lost their boots, but limped on, bloodshod. All went lame, all blind. Drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of gas shells dropping softly behind. Gas! Gas! Quick, boys! An ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets just in time. But someone still was yelling out and stumbling and floundering like a man in fire or lime. Dim through the misty panes and thick green light, as under a green sea, I saw him drowning. In all my dreams before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. If in some smothering dreams you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and watch the white eyes writhing in his face, his hanging face, like a devil's sick of sin, if you could hear, at every jolt, the blood come gargling from froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues, my friend, you would not tell with such high zest to children, ardent for some desperate glory, the old lie, dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. Wilfred Owen, 1918 A.D. War pigs. Now, in darkness, world stops turning, ashes where the body's burning. No more war pigs have the power. Hand of God has struck the hour. Day of judgment, God is calling. On their knees the war pigs crawling, begging mercy for their sins. Satan, laughing, spreads his wings. O Lord, yeah. John Michael Osborne, 1970 A.D. The Horseman. Prologue. War Pig. Chubby, cherubic Benjamin Berkeley Hotchkiss, the founder of the innovative Hotchkiss Corporation, was an American by birth and a resident of France by the nature of capitalism. He had a curious and inventive mind, coupled to a fascination with technology and engineering. Benjamin, like a handful of his fellow Americans of the time, made his fortune riding full tilt on the back of the American Civil War. As luck would have it, his entrepreneurial father owned a hardware factory. Thus, young Benjamin was afforded every opportunity to explore his interests in full, and what Benjamin found more delightful than anything else in the world, and what led directly to his fortune, was the glory of the gun. He started off with pistols and rifles, the classic Colt Peacemakers and Winchester repeating rifles of the day. But Benjamin had a big mind and wanted to make big American things. The bombardier's toy, the field artillery cannon, was calling his name. At 18, Benjamin received his cut of the family fortune. He invested all of it in artillery and never looked back. As birthright, fate, luck, and a little bit of the sweat of his brow would have it, Benjamin's investment and inventiveness secured U.S. patents for artillery shells designed for newfangled rifled cannon barrels. The cutting-edge shells were capable of firing with twice the range and accuracy that the old smooth-bore cannons offered, which delighted the United States War Department. Their delight grew when the Civil War came along, which presented the opportunity to throw Benjamin's shells at their erstwhile countrymen whose leaders were determined to hold on to their enslaved chattel at any cost to the grey uniformed men serving under them. Benjamin sat back and watched the war from afar, cashing check after check from the United States Treasury Department, until his bank accounts were brimming and his belly doubled in size from the prime-cut steaks and expensive wines his financial returns purchased. The rich meals left him with splitting headaches and vomitous retching into his expensive porcelain toilets. Although the aftermath of his celebratory practices was severe, the hangover could never quite overwhelm his love for the classic pairing of red meat and red French vintages. And yet, there were only so many steaks that one man could eat before the satisfaction waned. Benjamin yearned for more. He was rich, yes, very much so. But he considered himself a man of substance, a technical artist, a man exploring his own engineering genius for uncharted territories of human achievement. So Benjamin decided to forestall his habits. He forced himself to take a break from his meat, his treats, and his wine. He locked himself in the laboratory, letting his muse guide him in the creation of newer, better, cutting-edge, man-killing artillery. Unfortunately for Benjamin Hotchkiss and his brethren in the American armaments business, like all good things, the Civil War eventually came to an end. When Benjamin finished the blueprints for his coup de grace, a brilliant, highly mobile artillery piece, he took the train, exuberant all the way from Hartford, Connecticut to Washington, D.C., to meet with his friends in procurement at the War Department. To his great dismay, over lunch he was met with sad news. There was no cash or appetite in Washington for new stocks of weaponry, no matter how brilliant the design. The well had run dry. Benjamin took the train back north, angry and crestfallen. In his private car, he ate a prime cut of beautifully marbled, perfectly cooked cow flesh. But it tasted like old leather in his mouth. He washed it down with a bottle of Chateau Margaux and ordered a second steak. Even drunk on the bold red wine, the meal did not satisfy. He pushed aside the half-gnawed meat and had his server uncork a second Margaux. He waved the man away and poured his own glass to the rim. Benjamin gulped the wine and wiped it from his moustache. He stared at the blurry bottle of Chateau Margaux with its fancy Latin and French gibberish in the scrolls of the conjoined coats of arms flowing across the label. Fide et fortitude, honneur et patrie. Faith and fortitude, honor and fatherland. Benjamin teared up. He liked the sound of that. Folks that thought in those terms seemed like the kind of people he could almost certainly sell on the idea of purchasing a brand new, cutting-edge line of artillery. What better way to provide fortitude one could have faith in that would protect one's honor and fatherland, then with as many big, beautiful guns as possible. Benjamin's mind was made up before he got home to Hartford. Within a month, the mansion was packed, all the furniture draped, and he and the missus were sailing first class on the Cunard transatlantic steamer Mauritania, heading across the ocean in her luxury suite, with nothing but the clothes on their backs and the millions of US dollars in their bank accounts. From their first meeting, the French War Department embraced Benjamin Berkeley Hotchkiss with wide-open arms and unanticipating kissing of his chubby cheeks, which he took in stride, for their government coffer checkbook was open just as wide as their arms. "When in Rome," he remarked to his wife with a grin as he wiped the kisses off his cheeks. The couple settled for an estate near Paris, and Benjamin settled in comfortably, resurrecting his company as a French corporation, Hotchkiss et Cie, and embarking on the building of his dreams. His first surefire hit was the M1875 mountain gun he had designed in America. It was a smallish cannon with a rifled barrel and large wheels, but the joy of it was that she could be easily disassembled, her itinerant parts loaded onto a pair of mules, easing travel over any difficult terrain. The French army gobbled them up and shipped them out to begin work in their African colonies. The restless natives were no match for Benjamin's brilliant invention. Ironically, by 1875, despite the hard feelings Benjamin had about rejection in his former homeland, his brethren in the United States were desperately in need. Benjamin was pleased as punch when they came calling. The U.S. War Department was back in the market for guns, particularly of the powerful, mobile variety, and it so happened that Benjamin had just the thing. The goddamned indigenous people of the United States were just as restless as the natives in French Africa. They kept loudly demanding that treaties be honored and reservation boundaries be respected. For the men of privilege in Washington, now finding gold and other wonderful things on the supposedly worthless lands their forefathers had ceded to the local tribes, this was a headache of extraordinary magnitude. What better way to shut them up than with very loud cannon fire? The Hotchkiss M1875 mountain gun was perfectly suited to the task. The U.S. Army purchased the French-manufactured artillery at a substantial markup and unleashed the Hotchkiss M1875 onto the Nez Perce people to perfect effect. The tribe stood their ground with their allies for 5 days at Bear Paw, while M1875 rounds poured down like rain, cutting them to pieces. By the end, Chief Joseph, overwhelmed by numbers and firepower he could only dream of, laid down his Winchester rifle and surrendered. "I am tired of fighting," Chief Joseph lamented. "Our chiefs are killed. Looking Glass is dead. Tuhulhuzote is dead. The old men are all dead. It is the young men who say yes or no. And he who led the young men is dead. It is cold and we have no blankets. The little children are freezing to death. My people, some of them have run away to the hills and have no blankets, no food. No one knows where they are, perhaps freezing to death. I want to have time to look for my children and see how many of them I can find. Maybe I shall find them among the dead. Hear me, my chiefs. I'm tired. My heart is sick and sad. From where the sun now stands, I will fight no more forever. The 400-some pitiful survivors were driven south by foot, eventually imprisoned at Fort Leavenworth in Kansas. The flat, listless plains seemed 1,000,000 miles from the millions of acres of lush northwest rainforest the U.S. government's worthless treaties had guaranteed them. If Chief Joseph's heart was sick and sad before, it was cold and broken by the time the cell doors shut on him in Kansas. Death came for him soon after. The U.S. Army was delighted by the victory reports from the field. They ordered dozens more M1875s and used them to great effect. The Germans and Russians joined the queue, and when Benjamin Berkeley Hotchkiss brought forth his final invention, a 5-barreled, rapid-fire, Gatling gun-styled cannon, the world's leading armies all cut checks and brought home bleeding-edge artillery pieces that would be put to use worldwide, hauled by cavalry and affixed to ship decks as the colonial adventurers bestrode the earth like the colossi they deemed themselves. Benjamin Berkeley Hotchkiss's spirit soared, along with his wallet. The world was his oyster. He had wealth and power, and his genius, ignored and abandoned by his American brothers post-Civil War, had been restored to its proper place of honor and respect. The Chateau Margaux coat of arms might as well have been his own. Fide et fortitude. Benjamin uprooted his entire life and family and shipped them across the broad ocean with no guarantees of anything besides struggle. Hercules himself, demigod of stoic struggle, would have been proud. Yes, Benjamin Berkeley Hotchkiss had kept his faith in himself and faced down his fears with as much fortitude as any man could hope to possess. Honneur et patrie. This was slightly more complicated. After all, Benjamin was not entirely sure what honor meant. He assumed it meant being a good person, and he considered himself a God-fearing man. There was some dispute amongst the major Christian Judeo sects about what precisely was on the list of God's commandments, but Benjamin's sect kept it simple, relying on King James's version of God's law, and when Benjamin ran down his Lord's checklist, he was almost 100% certain he was not a sinner. Number 1, I am the Lord thy God, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Well, Benjamin had prayed to just the one God, unless you counted Jesus, or the Holy Ghost. But Benjamin was not sure that either of the other two counted as gods per se, so he felt safe on that account. Number 2, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them, for I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the 3rd and 4th generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Number 2 left a lot to unpack. Benjamin contented himself that he had never, ever whittled or carved any images that one might feel compelled to bow down to in worship, other than his cannons, and he did not think that counted. And as far as he could recollect, he had never bowed to any graven image that anybody else had carved, unless one counted the cross. And did that count? Benjamin was pretty sure it did not. If it did, it seemed like those things were absolutely everywhere you looked, and if putting them up and bowing down to them meant that you had broken the 2nd commandment, he figured he would be far from alone in that error, so it ought to be forgivable. Number 3, Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Benjamin stewed over this one for a few minutes. He was not entirely sure what it meant to take his God's name in vain. After all, what was the point of prayer if you weren't praying for help for yourself, or strength, courage, wisdom, good luck, and all the money you needed to make great things happen? He had definitely prayed nightly for those things, and they had come true. So he felt pretty okay on that score. Number 4, remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter, your male slave or your female slave, or your livestock, or the sojourner who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested on the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Well, this was an easy one. Benjamin loved the Sabbath. Who would not love the opportunity to rest on the 7th day as his God had after making the universe? Oftentimes, Benjamin took the entire weekend to relax and celebrate his achievements. It just made good sense. Check. Number 5, honor your father and your mother so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. Benjamin loved his parents and had tried to honor them with everything he did, starting in his father's factory in Hartford, Connecticut as a sprout, and every day thereafter, achieving things in the world of guns and money that dear old mum and dad could only have dreamt of. Definite yes on this one. Halfway home. Number 6, thou shalt not kill. Simple. To the point. No, Benjamin had never killed anyone. He was a builder of triggers, not a puller of them. At least not when there were actual people on the other end of the rifled barrel. He also made the easy assumption that God and Moses meant thou shalt not kill people. Never mind cows, etc. He was always pretty sure there was a passage in the good book somewhere in which God gave him and his fellows dominion over cows, etc. So, yes, definitely not a killer. Number 7, thou shalt not commit adultery. Despite all the opportunities being a man of wealth and power provided with members of the fairer sex, Benjamin had never even once committed adultery. He kept his faith with the woman who took his hand in marriage and followed him on his reckless journey to France, 100%. Now, yes, he did take another wife in France. In 1867, love-struck Benjamin married the second love of his life, taking her to have and to hold and to fornicate. But it was not adultery if they were married. There was nothing in the 10 Commandments about not having more than one wife. In fact, that sort of thing was all over the place in the Old Testament. It did not even seem like a loophole that he had slipped through. So Benjamin felt particularly okay about number 7. Number 8, thou shalt not steal. Benjamin had never stolen anything from anyone directly. If his guns in the hands of Americans, Germans, French, and Russians were used in the final decades of colonial rule to take things, land and lives, by force, how could Benjamin be held responsible for that? As far as Benjamin Berkeley Hotchkiss was concerned, once the guns were bought and paid for, the deeds committed with them belonged 100% on the new owner's ledger. Not a thief. Check. Number 9. Thou shalt not spread a false report. You shall not join hands with a wicked man to be a malicious witness. You shall not fall in with the many to do evil, nor shall you bear witness in a lawsuit siding with the many, so as to pervert justice, nor shall you be partial to a poor man in his lawsuit. Benjamin had never been summoned to a court of law as a witness, so truthfully, it had never been tested. But he felt certain that if he had ever been placed in a witness box and sworn in on the Holy Bible, that his answers would have all been forthright, and that he would no sooner have lied to benefit a poor man in that situation than he would have for a rich man. Check off number 9. One to go. 10. Thou shalt not covet your neighbour's house. You shall not covet your neighbour's wife, or his male or female slaves, his oxen or donkeys, or anything that belongs to your neighbour. There it was. Last but not least, big number 10. Yes, Benjamin had yearnings and all the manly desires, but those desires did not extend to his neighbours, nor their oxen and donkeys, nor their slaves/servants, be they male or female, nor the wives of the men on the estates that joined his, nor their beautiful houses for that matter. He coveted nothing that he could not purchase with his own cold hard cash. And he felt strongly that this was the finest house for miles, so what would he want with coveting anyone else's shabby mansion? On the one hand, yes, he was a proud man, but pride was a sin, not necessarily a commandment, right? So check. 10 out of 10. Thus, in Benjamin's final estimation, at least in the eyes of his God and the commandments Mr. Moses discovered up on the mountain top after speaking at length with a burning bush, his honour was untouched, unbroken, an unbroken maidenhead, thoroughly, virginally intact. Now the patrie bit. The patriotism section of the Chateau Margaux motto. This was a slightly sticky wicket. He weighed the slogan in his mind. Had he lived up to it? Had he served his fathers well? Benjamin's guns had gone to many fathers and fatherlands to do their dirty work. The reunited States, France, Russia, Germany. His devotion to fathers, the beloved patria, was widespread. So when Benjamin looked at what they all had in common, Christian patriarchies led by white men, he concluded decisively that yes, patrie indeed fit into his curriculum vitae quite well. After taking stock, considering the entirety of his life's work and the choices that guided it, Benjamin was satisfied that he had done all he could for God in heaven and Hotchkiss at sea on the ground. He was ready to bound forward into the next glorious chapter of his life. And then he died. His love affair with red meat, red wine, and French cheese put him in the grave in 1885, at the tender age of 58. His weeping wives, twin visions in mourning black veils, bore his decomposing, corpulent corpse back across the sea on the same route he and the first wife had taken when their post-Civil War adventure began. Benjamin Berkeley Hotchkiss was grandly laid to rest in the earthy bosom of his family's plot outside of Hartford, Connecticut, in the good old U.S. of A.